Today, we're going to decode something that doesn't usually show up on a company's balance sheet, but is absolutely reshaping how we think about value. We're talking about hidden risks and, believe it or not, some major unseen opportunities. So think about it for a second. A company's annual report. It's great at telling you about profits and losses, right? But how do you actually measure its risk from something like water scarcity? Or on the flip side, the real advantage it gets from having safer operations? For the longest time, trying to compare this stuff between companies was pretty much impossible. It was all just vague stories and marketing fluff. So how do we fix a problem like that? Well, you create a standard, something that acts kind of like a nutritional label, but for a company's performance. It gives investors the clear, apples-to-apples information they need to make much smarter decisions. And that solution is what's known as the SASB standards. Now, SASB, that stands for the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board. Their whole mission is to create one common language for companies to talk about sustainability. And the fact that they're now under the IFRS Foundation, which, oversees global accounting standards, that's a huge deal. It tells you just how mainstream this whole idea has become. Now, here's what's really, really smart about their approach. See this number? 77. SASB didn't create one giant, one-size-fits-all standard. No way. They developed 77 different ones, each one tailored to a specific industry. And why is that so important? Well, because the sustainability risks for a software company are totally different from the risks for, say, an oil and gas services company. This industry-specific approach is what makes the information not just interesting, but actually financially relevant. Okay, so we get what it is, but how does it really work? I mean, how do you take a super complex industry and boil it down to a clear set of numbers? Let's decode the framework. Each and every one of those 77 standards is built on the same 5 logical parts. First, it just describes the industry. Then, it zeroes in on the most financially important issues, which they call disclosure topics. For each of those topics, it gives you specific metrics to actually measure performance. The technical protocols make sure everyone's measuring the exact same way. No funny business. And finally, activity metrics give you context, so you can fairly compare a giant company to a much smaller one. And check this out. This shows you exactly how it works in practice. This is just a little snapshot for the oil and gas services industry. You can see the topics that matter most for them: emissions, water management, worker safety, business ethics. And notice how these aren't just vague ideas. No, they're tied to real, concrete units of measure: gigajoules, cubic meters, incident rates. It's all about turning these critical issues into hard, comparable data. Now, to really see the power of this, let's zoom in on just one of those topics: water management. This is just a perfect case study for how a single sustainability issue can be both a massive financial risk and a huge competitive opportunity. In the oil and gas world, water is like a coin with 2 very different sides. The risk side is huge. You've got water scarcity, insane disposal costs, and super tough regulations that can basically shut down an operation. But on the other side, that's where the opportunity is. A service company that figures out a better way to recycle water in a closed-loop system, well, they aren't just being green. They're offering a killer solution that saves their customers a ton of money and lowers their risk. And that is how you win market share. Okay, so there's a key term you have to understand here, and that's produced water. This is not just any old water. It's this really salty water, or brine, that comes surging up from deep underground, right alongside the oil and gas. Figuring out what to do with massive volumes of this stuff is honestly one of the industry's biggest headaches, both operationally and environmentally. So the challenge is crystal clear, but how do the SASB standards cut through all that complexity and tell an investor what they really need to know? What do companies actually have to put on paper? Well, it all boils down to these 2 incredibly powerful metrics. That's it, just 2. Number 1, what is the total volume of water your company is handling? And number 2, what percentage of that water are you recycling? With just these 2 numbers, an investor can suddenly compare every single company in the industry. You can see in a heartbeat who the leaders in water efficiency are and who's lagging way behind. It's simple, it's quantitative, and it's totally comparable. All right, so let's zoom back out for a second, because as important as water is, it's just one piece of a much, much bigger picture. The standard gives you this really comprehensive framework to understand how a company is truly performing across the board. The framework also digs into a bunch of other critical areas. I'm talking about measuring emissions and how efficiently a company manages fuel. It looks at how they handle dangerous chemicals, which is a huge operational risk. It even gets into their broader ecological impacts. And this is a big one. It quantifies workforce health and safety because, let's be honest, a safe company is a well-run company. It even looks at business ethics to spot corruption risks and asks how these companies are planning for those crazy worst-case scenario events. It's like a full 360-degree view of all the risks that actually matter.
So we've got all this data, right? But why does this truly matter? Well, it all comes back to the fundamental link between sustainability and, you guessed it, finance.
And look, the crucial point is right here, in this quote from the standard itself. This isn't about philanthropy or feeling good. It's about disclosing risks and opportunities that could, and I quote, reasonably be expected to affect the entity's cash flows. It says it right there. In other words, sustainability performance is financial performance, full stop. And that's the ultimate payoff, isn't it? When you have this clear, standardized, comparable data, the market can finally do its thing. Investors can actually see who's innovating and who's just talking a big game. They can reward the leaders and hold the laggards accountable. It creates this powerful incentive for every single company to get better at managing these risks and turning them into opportunities. So I'll just leave you with this one final thought. For over a century, we have compared companies based on profit and revenue. That's been the game. But what happens to our industries, to our whole economy, when a company's sustainability performance becomes just as easy to see, to measure, and to compare as its profit? What do you think will change then?